up with the harvest anymore. It was like every man for himself. So in my youth, as a young kid and a teenager, I witnessed this tremendous revolution on the farm. The end of a way of farming and the onset of factory farming. You drive through farm country today, you just don't see flocks of birds. You don't see turkeys, you don't see chickens, you don't see pigs. If you see cattle, it's only fleetingly, and it's not a very typical farm. So the farm animals have largely disappeared from view because of factory farming. My very first exposure to a factory farm was a big battery egg building. 60,000, 70,000 layer hens in cages, 5 and 6 to a cage, stacked up 3 and 4 levels high, rows of cages as far as the eye can see. But you really can't fully sense the horror of a factory farm unless you can smell it. You can hardly breathe in there. And the gases are like methane, hydrogen sulfide, and some of those can be toxic. And the darkness in these places. You see, in a factory farm, they don't have the lights on when they have to feed the animals or do something in the buildings. Most of the time, those animals are in the dark, packed in there like sardines. Smelling those smells, hearing those sounds, seeing those sights, I was shocked. I had had this experience as a farm kid, chickens outdoors, pecking the worms and the bugs, cattle coming and going from the barn to the fields, pigs living in the mud hole. But the whole theory of factory farming is to put all that inside, feed them and water them by machines, remove the waste by machines, and that way you don't have to use hired help. That makes it cheaper. It makes it possible to have larger numbers of animals. Like we could only milk 15 or 16 cows by hand. Well, if you had 15 or 16 cows today, you couldn't make a living. So the farmer has 500 cows or 1,000 cows. And the cows don't get to go very far. They don't want them to leave the barn and go run out in the pasture all day. They want them to stay right close because they're going to milk them again in a few hours. So they keep them in a concrete paddock. And in some places in the Southwest, there is no pasture. The cows really sort of live in the milking barn all the time, year-round. So when we say factory farming, we're talking about the application of industrial techniques, which is mass production and labor reduction.
As soon as animals are being used as economic units, and they're used as economic units in small farms too, we have a concern that their well-being will become secondary or even further down the list.
And this is a little girl who was rescued from an egg factory. And the reason they're debeaked, and that's literally chopping off their beaks, is because they're very territorial, like most other animals and humans, and they establish their territory by pecking. Well, in nature, they would peck and run off and nobody would get hurt. But when they're confined in cages, they can't escape each other, and they would peck each other to death. So rather than reduce the crowding, the egg industry just chops off their beaks. And of course, it's extremely painful. Many, in fact, birds die from the procedure, and the beaks never grow back. And when we find and rescue the laying hens, because they're in these battery cages for a year, sometimes 2 years, generally they've lost 75% of their feathering and have bruises and red sores all over their body. And yet, animals that have been denied any natural behavioral needs, the day after they come here, they're nesting, they make little nests, and they stretch out in the sun. They love to sunbathe, and it's like for the first time you can almost hear them going, oh yeah. They stretch out their wings, and they like to do dust baths where they go into the dirt and kick up dirt around them to help control lice. And they start walking really tentatively at first, and pretty soon they're booking around the farmyard, and they take these steps almost like this. They actually, if you see a lane hen rescue, they will go like this and like this because they don't know how to walk. It's one of those ironic things, again, where it warms your heart to see them do that, and it also hits you in the gut because you realize when they're in these cages, they want to do that. They never forget how to be a chicken.
Most animals arrive really scared of people. You know, they don't know much about compassion and humans. They see a person and they think, oh, what's going to happen to me now? They all hear it. Oh, Nicka's my favorite. I do caregiving here, and it's really neat to see that transformation. You know, they learn to trust us, that we're not going to hurt them. You're a water hog.
Yeah, you's the luckiest pigs on the face of the planet. Yeah, come on over here. I'll give you a scratch. Yeah. You tell them chickens you're the smartest animal on the farm, huh?
You can teach a pig to sit. You can teach a pig to come. You can teach a pig the same types of things that people would teach dogs.
I actually had one on my farm that used to come up to the house, stand on its back feet, and open the door with its mouth and come in the house. Every time that hog, and we called it Piggo, every time it would come into the house, if my mother-in-law was there, she would leave. I never let anything happen to that hog. I had a very soft spot in my heart about that hog. I invited it up to the house often.
The reason that people connect with pigs here is because the pigs really like attention from people.
Oh, he's adorable. Oh.
You can see it when the people are in there rubbing their bellies. They're just like grunt and groan in pleasure and roll over.
What do you think, Ruben? What do you say? Huh? Oh, right there. Right there.
The biggest thing that I remember everybody always thinking about pigs is how pigs are dirty. Pigs, they ruin everything. They want to be completely filthy. And pigs don't have sweat glands, so they even tend to get hotter than we would. And so the pigs do enjoy mud baths because it helps cool them down. But in general, they keep themselves very clean.
You know when you got it good, don't you? Huh? Look at those jowls. You've been into the groceries too much. Yeah. Look at those jowls. Yeah.
And I guess the other common stereotype is you're a pig if you eat too much or you indulge too much. And the pigs do, you know, I would love to I would love to say that stereotype isn't true, but the pigs do love all kinds of foods and they'll just eat about anything. But, you know, it's one of their endearing qualities, you know. It's the reason that pigs are so big and they get to be so fat is they're genetically manipulated so that they gain weight really quickly so that they can be slaughtered at a young age and people can eat them. But I think they probably still have a love for food. Our older pigs, we could feed them in the morning and, you know, everybody would come out to eat slowly and nonchalantly and it wasn't a huge panic rush. But these little pigs, when they first came, I remember going out with 2 buckets and the pigs swarming me, grabbing the buckets from me. I ended up on the ground trying to just get out. So we decided to lock them out while we put down the food. And so that's what we do now and it works a lot better. I mean, they're really, really vocal. They're telling us to hurry up. They're telling us, you know, we're starving. And we keep them locked off until we get all of the food down. And, you know, it takes us 20, 25 minutes to put all the food down, so they're all riled up.
All right, guys. Is it time to go eat? Is that what you're talking about? Huh?
So then when we open the gate, it's amazing. It's like a mad rush, but it's silent.
probably the single most upsetting experience in my life was when I was about 5 or 6 years old and I saw the pig slaughter for the first time. I was too young to really know what was going on. All I can remember is that that morning it was very busy around the place. People were coming in and parking in the yard, and there was much of a scurrying about in the kitchen. And I stepped out on the back porch, stepped down the steps, and saw dead pigs hanging from the tree, and it was horrifying. And then the other thought I remember is looking down into these wash tubs that were full of pigs' heads and blood. And then I blacked out. And I don't really remember what happened for the next few days, but the family tells me that I freaked out, I became hysterical, and they had to take me to town and stay with my aunt for a few days. And then I had nightmares, and that I didn't want to come back to home. Didn't want to come back to the farm.
Let me scratch your back.
Years later, I just kept reflecting and talking to other people that had similar experiences, and it just shows me that there's some basic humanity, some basic compassion, or some empathy that we all have. I don't think I was an especially sensitive kid. I don't think I was a special kid. I think maybe a lot of other farm kids had the same experiences and were never bold enough to talk about them.
Most of the slaughtering we did was on the farm, but occasionally we'd go, especially on weekends. There was a family-owned slaughterhouse in our area. It was the biggest one, and we would go there, and sometimes I would help out. I think they know way before then. They don't want to go. It's just because I think they know what's going to happen to them. And definitely when they get there, they can hear it. They can hear the cows, they're bellowing and stuff when they go in. It's a pretty awful sound. And they're getting prodded off from the trailer, and shock prods don't feel good. And they don't like it, and that makes them scared and anxious and afraid. And they start bellowing, and they hear the other cows, and literally in a big slaughterhouse, they're screaming. It sounds like people. People ask me, how on earth could you have ever done that? And it's really hard. It's a very hard question to answer. How do you do it? How do you, kill an animal? How do you find it within yourself to kill it and butcher it? As time went by, you just realized that you needed to keep a certain amount of distance emotionally from the animals. So you trained yourself. It was a discipline like anything else, an emotional discipline. And I didn't break through that conditioning until I came to Farm Sanctuary. I have to admit, I thought a farm sanctuary, well, that's a pretty cool idea, but it's a pretty nuts idea. Because I thought, geez, you know how many millions of farm animals there are in this country?
This really is a global issue. As has been referred to, farm animal abuse seems so huge, seems so untouchable. But the reality of it is, many people can make a decision to not support it. And so that's what...
And right there on the spot after I listened to Gene's talk, I said, I have to adopt a cow. And my wife says, why a cow? That's the most expensive animal. And I said, I just have to. And I didn't really know. I couldn't verbalize why at that moment. So we went out there, and I found him, and his name was Snickers. He came here with his mother. She was a dairy cow that had chronic mastitis. Anyway, they brought Rosie and Snickers here. And when I saw him, he wasn't very big, and he was kind of skittish. He wasn't used to being around people. But he finally came up to me, and I fed him some apples, and we kind of hit it off, and I thought, this is really cool. And of course, the other cows that have been here for a while, they're used to being petted, and I spent time with them, and I thought, this is great. And at that visit, I thought, this is not like any experience I've ever had on a farm or around cows. And it gave me something to think about. And it wasn't until a year later that it came back, and that's when it happened. All the cows were up in the barn, and Snickers was over in the far corner, and of course it's been about a year since I'd seen him. So I walk about halfway to him, and I look at him, and I say, "Snickers," and I put out my arms, and it was unbelievable. He ran over to me, as much as a cow can run. He runs over to me, and he puts his head right in my chest. He just thumps me right in the chest with his forehead. And he just stands there leaning against me. And I just wrap my arms around his neck. And it was... I'm sorry. I think that he knew just where to hit me to kind of open me up to that part of me that had been closed off. Because after he thumped me in the chest, it was like he hit me right in the heart. And I knew right then that that's exactly what I'd shut off ever since I was a kid. I had this image in my head. The image was this big light switch right here. And that light switch had been off. And when he bumped me in the chest and just stayed there, I realized that I had developed this capacity as a kid to either turn it on or off. I could turn it on for my dog. I could turn it on for the people in my circle of compassion. And now I realized why I had to adopt a cow, and how Providence would have it, or whatever, that Snickers be that lesson giver, the one who made me realize how I was able to do that, to abuse animals at times when I lived on a farm, to kill them, to slaughter them, to eat them. I was just able to turn that off. And